Have you ever felt like you're just drifting through life, unsure of what you're really meant to be doing? Maybe you wake up each day to the same routine, go through the motions, but something deep inside you whispers that there's more to life than this. Something more meaningful, something that gives your days purpose, something that brings you fulfillment. But no matter how hard you try to grasp it, it always seems just out of reach. You're not alone in this search. This question has echoed through time, across cultures, and among countless individuals. What is the true purpose of life? It's a question that everyone, at some point, finds themselves asking. And while the answers may differ, one thing remains clear: finding purpose isn't something that happens by accident. It takes effort. It takes awareness. It takes wisdom. In this video, we're going to explore how Buddhist teachings can provide the insight and guidance needed to find real purpose in life. These ancient practices have been used for centuries to help people discover the deeper meaning behind their existence. And today, we're going to see how we can apply these teachings to our modern lives. The Buddha once said, "The mind is everything. What you think, you become." And if we truly understand this, we begin to see that finding purpose is not about looking for something outside ourselves. It's about cultivating clarity and understanding within, about recognizing that the answers lie not in external achievements, but in the way we perceive, live, and respond to the world. This quest for meaning is something that's deeply human. And while the search for purpose might feel like a journey to find the perfect job, the perfect relationship, or the perfect success, Buddhist wisdom teaches us that real meaning arises from a different source, from understanding the nature of suffering, impermanence, and interconnectedness. It's in learning to live with intention, to make every moment count, and to bring mindfulness to everything we do. But how do we begin? How do we find purpose in a world that often feels overwhelming, confusing, and chaotic? The good news is that the path is simpler than we might think. Buddhist wisdom shows us that true purpose doesn't require grand achievements or monumental changes. It requires the courage to look inward, to recognize the truth about ourselves and our lives, and to act with compassion and clarity. Let's take the first step together. In this video, we'll uncover key teachings from Buddhism that can help you stop drifting through life and start living with clarity and purpose. We'll explore how mindfulness, awareness, and self-compassion can guide you to find a deeper, more meaningful existence. The search for purpose starts now, and it begins within you. Part 2. Understanding the nature of suffering. Why does life feel so difficult at times? Why does it seem like we're constantly battling obstacles, uncertainty, and pain? These are questions that can leave us feeling disheartened, as if life is an endless struggle. Whether it's the weight of expectations, the pressures of daily life, or the pain of loss and disappointment, it often feels like suffering is an inevitable part of existence. But what if I told you that understanding the nature of suffering could be the key to unlocking true purpose in life? What if, by learning to accept suffering and its role in our lives, we could transform how we view our existence? This concept is at the very core of Buddhist teachings, and it holds the answer to one of life's greatest mysteries. The Buddha, in his teachings, described life as being inherently marked by suffering. But this doesn't mean that life is hopeless or meaningless. In fact, it's through understanding suffering that we can begin to understand what it means to truly live with purpose and meaning. The Buddha's Four Noble Truths are fundamental to this understanding. The first truth is simple: life involves suffering, what Buddhists refer to as dukkha. This suffering comes in many forms: physical pain, emotional turmoil, mental anguish, and the suffering caused by our attachment to things and people. It's not something we can escape, no matter how hard we try. But here's the important part: this recognition of suffering doesn't mean that life is pointless. In fact, it's the very acknowledgement of suffering that creates the foundation for us to live more fully, with deeper purpose. Because once we understand that suffering is part of the human condition, we no longer need to run from it. Instead, we can learn to face it, transform it, and use it as a stepping stone toward true growth and fulfillment. So, how can this knowledge help you live a more meaningful life? The first step is to understand that suffering is not something to fear. avoid, or try to get rid of. Instead, it's something to observe, accept, and learn from. When we accept that suffering is part of life, we free ourselves from the endless cycle of chasing pleasure and avoiding pain. We stop clinging to things, people, or circumstances that we think will make us happy, and we begin to see that happiness and purpose are not dependent on external conditions, but on our inner state of mind. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from craving and attachment, our constant desire for things to be different than they are. When we desire things, we create a mental attachment to them. This attachment brings suffering because it creates an expectation of permanence in a world that is constantly changing. When things don't go as we want, when we lose something we value, or when change occurs, we suffer. However, by understanding this truth, we can start to change the way we relate to our experiences. Instead of reacting with frustration, resentment, or fear, we can respond with compassion and equanimity. This is the path to real freedom, to live in a way that allows us to experience life fully, without being controlled by our attachments or fears. By understanding the nature of suffering, we begin to uncover the path to a more meaningful existence. Suffering, in this sense, becomes a teacher, showing us what we value most, what we cling to, and what we need to let go of in order to live more freely. This is the first key to finding purpose, acknowledging suffering and understanding its role in our lives. Through this awareness, we open ourselves to a deeper wisdom that can guide us toward living with more clarity and intention. Part 3. The root causes of suffering, craving, and attachment. What is it that truly causes our suffering? We often think that pain, loss, or difficulty are the primary sources of suffering in our lives. But the Buddhist teachings go much deeper than this. According to Buddhist wisdom, the root causes of suffering are not external circumstances but internal mental states. At the heart of suffering is craving, the insatiable desire for things to be different than they are, and attachment, the mental clinging to things, experiences, or outcomes. Think about the times in your life when you felt truly disappointed or unhappy. Was it because something bad happened? Or was it because you were attached to a specific outcome that didn't materialize? Perhaps you were attached to a certain idea of success, or maybe you were craving approval, wealth, or a relationship that didn't come to fruition. These desires create expectations that life must unfold in a certain way. When reality doesn't meet those expectations, suffering arises. Craving and attachment are the roots of all suffering. In his second noble truth, the Buddha identified these as the sources of dukkha, our suffering. He taught that the more we crave, the more we are bound to suffer. Why? Because nothing in this world is permanent. Everything changes. We can't hold on to anything forever, whether it's a job, a relationship, a material possession, or even our own health. Yet, we keep clinging to these things, hoping they will bring us lasting happiness. And when they inevitably change or disappear, we suffer. The Buddha observed that we don't just crave things or experiences, we also crave approval, power, and a sense of permanence. This craving creates a cycle of desire, disappointment, and more desire. The more we chase after things, the more unfulfilled we feel. But how can we stop this cycle of craving and attachment? The first step is to understand that craving is not a natural, inevitable part of being human. It is a mental habit that can be broken. When we realize that everything we crave is temporary, we start to loosen our grip on these desires. By recognizing the impermanence of everything, we can learn to appreciate life as it is, rather than constantly striving for more. The Buddhist teachings on the middle way offer a path forward. This is a path that avoids both indulgence in sensory pleasures and self-mortification. It is about finding a balance between the extremes of wanting too much and wanting too little. By practicing moderation and mindfulness, we can break the cycle of craving and attachment. Practical steps to reduce craving and attachment. 1. Practice mindfulness. Pay attention to your desires without judgment. When you feel the urge to crave something, whether it's food, success, approval, or anything else, notice it. Don't suppress it, but observe it. Ask yourself, why do I want this? What would happen if I let go of this craving? 2. Reflect on impermanence. Everything changes. Remind yourself that nothing lasts forever. This helps loosen the attachment you have to people, possessions, or outcomes. 3. Cultivate contentment, rather than constantly seeking more. Practice gratitude for what you have. Contentment arises when we stop measuring our worth against what we don't have and instead focus on what we do. 4. Let go of expectations. Life doesn't always go as planned, and that's okay. When we stop expecting things to unfold in a certain way, we allow ourselves to experience life with greater freedom and peace. By learning to recognize and reduce craving and attachment, we free ourselves from the cycle of suffering. This doesn't mean we stop desiring or stop pursuing things we value. It means we stop clinging to them, knowing that our happiness doesn't depend on them. When we let go of our attachments, we make space for a deeper, more lasting sense of fulfillment that comes from within. Part 4. The practice of letting go. Freedom from attachment. Letting go. It's a concept we've all heard, but how many of us truly understand what it means? In Buddhism, the practice of letting go is one of the most powerful tools for freeing ourselves from suffering. But letting go doesn't mean giving up or resigning to fate. It means releasing our attachment to the outcomes, desires, and expectations that bind us to cycles of craving and dissatisfaction. It's about freeing ourselves from the belief that happiness lies somewhere outside of ourselves. The struggle to let go often comes from fear. Fear of losing control, fear of uncertainty, fear of being vulnerable. But it's important to realize that attachment itself is a form of control. We try to hold on to things, people, or situations because we fear that without them, we'll lose our sense of self or security. Yet, this very attachment keeps us trapped in cycles of stress, anxiety, and frustration. The Buddhist teachings on non-attachment encourage us to recognize that our happiness doesn't depend on external circumstances. It's not found in possessions, relationships, or achievements. True happiness arises when we let go of our need to control, to grasp, and to cling. Why is it so hard to let go? The reason it's so challenging to let go is that we often confuse attachment with love or security. We think that if we love something or someone, we must hold on to it tightly. But attachment comes from fear and the desire to possess, whereas love comes from a place of freedom and generosity. When we truly love something or someone, we don't try to control or possess them. Instead, we allow them to be as they are. Buddhism teaches us that all things are impermanent. Whether we like it or not, everything changes. People come and go. Possessions wear out. Circumstances shift. Holding on to the idea that things should stay the same causes us to suffer. But when we embrace impermanence and practice letting go, we can find peace in the ever-changing flow of life. How can we practice letting go? The practice of letting go is not something that happens overnight. It requires patience, mindfulness, and a willingness to embrace discomfort. Here are a few steps to help you begin the process. 1. Cultivate mindfulness of attachment. Pay attention to the things you're attached to. It might be a relationship, a job, a material possession, or even an idea about yourself. Notice how these attachments influence your thoughts and actions. 2. Acknowledge the impermanence of life. Remind yourself regularly that everything is temporary. People, situations, and experiences are all fleeting. When you understand this, it becomes easier to release your grip. 3. Practice detachment in small ways. Let go of small attachments in your daily life. Maybe you're attached to your morning routine, a favorite possession, or your usual way of doing things. Try letting go of these minor attachments to build your capacity for greater detachment. 4. Let go of the need for control. Often, we hold on to things because we feel like we need to control them. But the more we try to control life, the more out of control we feel. Instead, practice surrendering to the flow of life and trusting that things will unfold as they are meant to. 5. Embrace the uncertainty of life. Life is unpredictable, and that's okay. When we let go of our need to predict, control, and guarantee outcomes, we open ourselves up to the beauty of the present moment, the freedom in letting go. Letting go is not about giving up on life. In fact, it's the opposite. By releasing our attachment to outcomes, we can experience life more fully, more freely, and with a deeper sense of peace. We can embrace life as it comes, without constantly trying to make it fit our expectations. When we stop clinging, we stop resisting, we stop fighting against the natural flow of life. And in that surrender, we find true freedom. Letting go of attachment doesn't mean living a life of indifference. It means living a life of open-heartedness and acceptance. It's about being present with life as it is, without trying to force it into a particular mold. The more we practice letting go, the more we realize that we don't need anything outside of ourselves to be happy. Happiness arises from within when we stop clinging to fleeting things. Part 5. The path to true peace. Embracing the present moment. The present moment is the only moment that truly exists. Yet, how often do we live in the past or worry about the future? We get caught up in memories of what has already happened, or in the anxieties of what might happen. But both of these states rob us of the only reality we truly have, the here and now. In Buddhist wisdom, living in the present moment is not just a practice, it's a way of life. It's a way of fully experiencing each moment as it comes, without distraction or judgment. When we are present, we are free from regret about the past or fear of the future. We are simply here, fully alive, and deeply connected to the unfolding of life. Why is it so difficult to stay present? Our minds are constantly racing, jumping from one thought to the next. We are conditioned to think that we need to always be planning, striving, or anticipating. But this constant mental chatter often prevents us from experiencing life as it is. We are either lost in the past or projecting into the future, but rarely do we take the time to truly be present. In Buddhist practice, this is called mindlessness, a state of living on autopilot, where we're unaware of our thoughts, emotions, and actions. Mindlessness keeps us trapped in cycles of dissatisfaction because we are not engaged with life as it truly is. The antidote to mindlessness is mindfulness. Mindfulness is the art of paying attention to the present moment, with intention and without judgment. It's about tuning into our senses, noticing the world around us, and becoming deeply aware of our inner state. When we practice mindfulness, we break free from the constant noise in our minds and reconnect with the world as it truly is. How can we cultivate mindfulness in our daily lives? Mindfulness is a skill that can be developed with practice. Here are some simple ways to bring mindfulness into your everyday life. 1. Start with your breath. Your breath is always with you, and it's the perfect anchor to bring you back to the present moment. Try taking a few deep breaths, focusing your attention on the sensation of air entering and leaving your body. 2. Be aware of your surroundings, whether you're walking, eating, or sitting. Take a moment to notice the sights, sounds, and smells around you. Engage your senses fully in whatever you are doing. 3. Let go of multitasking. When we try to do multiple things at once, we often end up not doing any of them well. Instead, focus on one task at a time, bringing your full attention to what you're doing in the moment. 4. Practice mindful listening. When you're speaking with someone, truly listen to them without thinking about what you're going to say next. Let their words fill your mind, and be present in the conversation. 5. Be kind to yourself. Mindfulness isn't about being perfect. It's about noticing when your mind drifts and gently bringing it back to the present. Be patient and compassionate with yourself as you practice. The transformative power of being present. When we truly embrace the present moment, we begin to experience life in a way that is both profound and simple. We start to appreciate the beauty of the world around us, the richness of our relationships, and the simple joys of everyday life. Being present also means letting go of attachment to outcomes. When we are truly present, we are not fixated on the results of our actions. We act with intention, but we release our grip on the need to control how things will turn out. We trust that life will unfold as it should. In fact, present moment awareness is one of the most powerful ways to reduce suffering. When we stop living in the past or future, we free ourselves from regret, anxiety, and fear. We can meet each moment with an open heart, ready to respond with compassion, clarity, and wisdom. True peace comes when we embrace the present moment. Peace is not something we acquire or chase after. It's a state of being that arises naturally when we stop resisting what is and accept life as it unfolds. We often think that peace comes from external circumstances, when we have enough money, when our relationships are perfect, or when we have achieved our goals. But in truth, peace comes from within. When we learn to be present, we realize that peace is already here. In this moment, it's in the breath we take, the smile of a loved one, the quiet moments of reflection. Peace is not found in the future or in the past. It is here, right now. By practicing mindfulness, we can develop the ability to stay grounded in the present, no matter what external circumstances arise. This is how we cultivate true peace, by surrendering to the present moment and embracing it fully. Part 6. Overcoming the ego. Letting go of self-identification. The ego is a concept that many of us struggle with throughout our lives. It's the part of us that identifies with labels, our names, our achievements, our roles in society. But what if I told you that the ego is the root cause of much of our suffering? In Buddhist wisdom, the ego is not something we need to fight or destroy, but something we need to understand and transcend. The ego creates a false sense of self that separates us from the interconnectedness of all beings. We believe that we are this person, with this history, these desires, and these fears. We cling to our identity as if it's the truest thing about us. But in doing so, we lock ourselves into a limited, narrow perspective of reality. The ego thrives on attachment to how we see ourselves and how others see us. We fear losing our sense of identity because, without it, who are we? The ego creates barriers between us and others, making us feel separate and isolated. It drives our desires, fuels our pride, and cultivates our fears. And yet, as we cling to this egoic sense of self, we only deepen our suffering. So, how can we transcend the ego and break free from this cycle? The Buddha teaches that the key to overcoming the ego is understanding the impermanent nature of life. The ego is built on the illusion of a permanent, unchanging self, but in reality, everything, our thoughts, our emotions, our bodies, is in a constant state of flux. The person you were yesterday is not the same as the person you are today. Your desires, your ideas, and your body are always changing. When we recognize this, we begin to see that the ego is nothing more than a temporary construct, a series of thoughts and attachments that we mistakenly take as our true self. To begin letting go of the ego, we must first practice non-attachment. We need to loosen our grip on the things we identify with, whether it's our career, our reputation, or even our beliefs. Non-attachment doesn't mean indifference or apathy. It means recognizing that nothing in this world is permanent, and thus, we cannot cling to any one thing as if it defines who we are. Buddhism encourages us to practice self-inquiry, asking the question, who am I, really? When we look deeply into ourselves, we begin to see that we are not a fixed, solid entity. Instead, we are a collection of experiences, thoughts, feelings, and perceptions that constantly shift and change. By peeling away these layers of false identification, we come closer to the truth of our nature, a nature that is boundless, free, and interconnected with all of life. Letting go of the ego is not about erasing our individuality. It's about seeing through the illusion that we are separate, isolated beings. We don't need to reject our personality, our preferences, or our unique traits, but we must recognize that they do not define us. We are not our ego. We are not our accomplishments, our possessions, or even our body. We are part of a greater whole, a vast and interconnected web of life. When we let go of our attachment to the ego, we experience a profound sense of freedom. We stop trying to prove ourselves, to gain approval, or to defend our identity. Instead, we are free to simply be present, open, and connected with the world around us. The ego also creates fear and suffering. One of the primary reasons we cling so tightly to the ego is because of our fear of losing it. We fear rejection, failure, and the judgment of others. These fears are rooted in our attachment to the idea that our ego is our true self. But when we begin to let go of this attachment, we free ourselves from these fears. When we stop identifying with the ego, we are no longer afraid of what others think of us. We are no longer obsessed with achieving external validation or success. We are free to live authentically, without the constant pressure of maintaining a certain image or persona. The path to freedom from the ego is not about negating the self, but about transcending it. It's about recognizing that the true self is not limited to the small, temporary identity we have created, but is boundless, compassionate, and connected to all beings. As we deepen our understanding of this interconnectedness, we move closer to a state of inner peace and clarity. The practice of letting go of the ego is not easy, but it is the key to true liberation. The more we understand the impermanence of the ego, the less power it has over us. As we begin to recognize that we are more than our egoic identities, we step into a life that is richer, fuller, and more meaningful. This is the path to true freedom. It's the path of transcending the small self and embracing the boundless nature of who we truly are. And in doing so, we not only free ourselves from the prison of ego, but also open ourselves to the deep peace and wisdom that comes from living in harmony with the world around us. Part 7. The Practice of Mindfulness. Returning to the present moment. In the hustle and bustle of modern life, we are often caught up in the whirlwind of thoughts, plans, worries, and distractions. Our minds race from one thought to the next, pulling us away from the present moment. But as the Buddha taught, the present moment is all we truly have. It is in this moment, and only in this moment, that we can experience life in its fullest depth. Mindfulness is one of the most powerful tools in Buddhist wisdom for breaking free from this cycle of distraction and bringing ourselves back to the present. In essence, mindfulness is the practice of paying attention, without judgment, to our thoughts, feelings, and actions, as well as the world around us. When we are mindful, we become fully aware of the present moment, free from the constant chatter of the past and future. We begin to see things as they truly are, without the filter of our judgments, biases, or expectations. Mindfulness is the gateway to insight. It allows us to witness the flow of life without becoming entangled in it, providing us with the clarity to make wiser decisions and experience greater peace. So, how can we practice mindfulness in our daily lives? Mindfulness doesn't require us to retreat from the world or to meditate for hours on end. It's a practice that can be integrated into every aspect of our daily routine. Whether we are eating, walking, talking, or simply breathing, we can bring mindfulness into the moment by fully engaging with whatever we are doing. Start with something simple, like breathing. The breath is always with us, and it is one of the most immediate ways to ground ourselves in the present. Take a few moments throughout the day to close your eyes. Focus on your breath and observe the sensations as you inhale and exhale. Feel the rise and fall of your chest, the coolness of the air as it enters your nose, and the warmth as it leaves. This simple act can bring you back to the present moment, calming your mind and centering your thoughts. But mindfulness isn't just about breathing. It's about being fully present in whatever you are doing. When you are eating, focus on the taste, texture, and aroma of your food. When you are walking, feel each step as it connects with the ground beneath you. When you are talking with someone, truly listen to their words, without letting your mind wander to your own thoughts or judgments. As you practice mindfulness, you may notice that your mind will often wander. This is completely natural. The key is not to get frustrated or upset with yourself when this happens, but to gently bring your attention back to the present moment. Over time, you will notice that your ability to stay present becomes stronger, and you will begin to experience the richness and depth of life in a new way. Mindfulness also helps us to cultivate a deeper awareness of our thoughts and emotions. When we are mindful, we can observe our thoughts without becoming attached to them. We realize that thoughts are just that, thoughts. They are not who we are. Similarly, we can observe our emotions without identifying with them. We learn to sit with our emotions, without reacting impulsively, instead of becoming overwhelmed by anger, fear, or sadness. We can simply observe them as passing experiences, knowing that they, too, are impermanent. One of the most profound teachings of Buddhism is the understanding of impermanence, that all things, including our thoughts and emotions, are transient. This is especially important when it comes to mindfulness. By observing our experiences in the present moment, we can see that everything arises and passes away. The tension we feel in our bodies, the anxiety in our minds, or the joy in our hearts, they are all fleeting. Mindfulness helps us to witness this impermanence without clinging to any particular experience, allowing us to cultivate a deeper sense of peace. The practice of mindfulness also allows us to develop compassion. When we are mindful of our own suffering, we begin to develop greater empathy for the suffering of others. We begin to see that we are all connected, that our pain is not separate from the pain of others, and that our joy is not separate from the joy of others. This awareness leads to greater kindness and understanding in our interactions with others. Mindfulness is also the path to greater clarity. As we practice being fully present, we begin to clear away the mental clutter that obscures our true nature. We can more clearly see our motivations, our desires, and the patterns of thought that govern our lives. This awareness allows us to make wiser choices and to live more intentionally. We no longer act out of habit or impulse, but from a place of deep understanding and presence. The Buddha once said, "When you realize how perfect everything is, you will tilt your head back and laugh at the sky." Mindfulness helps us to see the perfection in the present moment, to appreciate the richness of life as it unfolds. It allows us to let go of our expectations and desires, and to simply experience life as it is. In conclusion, mindfulness is the practice of awakening to the present moment, to the richness of life that is always here, always now. It is the practice of being fully present in everything we do, and of observing our thoughts and emotions without attachment. It is the path to greater peace, wisdom, and compassion, and it is a powerful tool for overcoming the distractions and suffering that keep us from living a truly fulfilling life. Part 8. Embracing Impermanence, the key to living fully. One of the central teachings of Buddhism is the concept of impermanence, the understanding that everything in life is constantly changing, and nothing lasts forever. It is an idea that can be unsettling, even frightening, at first glance. After all, we are conditioned to seek stability, permanence, and security in our lives. We build relationships, careers, and possessions, hoping that they will provide us with lasting happiness. But the Buddha's wisdom teaches us that the more we cling to things, the more we suffer. Impermanence is not just about the external world. It is also about our internal experience. Our thoughts, feelings, and emotions are all constantly changing. One moment we may feel happy, and the next moment sadness arises. One moment we may feel confident, and the next moment fear takes over. This constant flux is not something to fear, but something to embrace. When we understand the nature of impermanence, we begin to let go of our attachment to things, people, and experiences. We start to realize that everything we experience, good or bad, will pass. This realization doesn't lead to despair or nihilism. Rather, it brings us a deep sense of freedom. When we stop clinging to things, we stop fearing their loss. We begin to appreciate the present moment as it is, without projecting our desires, fears, or expectations onto it. The Buddha taught that attachment is the root of suffering. When we become attached to people, objects, or outcomes, we create expectations that things should stay the same. But life, by its very nature, is constantly changing. And when things inevitably change, we suffer because we have become attached to them. This attachment can take many forms: our attachment to material possessions, to our sense of self, or to the way things are supposed to be. But impermanence, as a Buddhist concept, is not about nihilism or resignation. It is about embracing change as an inevitable part of life and using it as an opportunity for growth and transformation. In fact, impermanence is the very reason why life is so precious. Because everything is temporary, every moment becomes a chance to live fully, to appreciate the fleeting beauty of existence, and to act with intention and purpose. The key is to develop a mindset that allows us to live with equanimity, the ability to remain calm and balanced in the face of change. When we develop equanimity, we can experience joy and sorrow without becoming overwhelmed by either. We can embrace the joys of life without clinging to them, and we can experience loss or difficulty without being consumed by grief. Equanimity allows us to face the ever-changing nature of life with peace and resilience. Think of it this way. Every moment we experience is like a wave on the ocean. Sometimes the waves are gentle, and sometimes they are fierce, but all waves eventually return to the ocean. The same is true for our experiences. All feelings, all thoughts, all circumstances, they arise and fall away. They do not define us, and they do not last forever. This understanding helps us to live with a sense of calm in the face of the inevitable changes and challenges life throws our way. To embrace impermanence is to live with intention. When we realize that our time is limited, that every moment is precious and fleeting, we are less likely to waste time on things that don't matter. We start to focus on what is truly important: our relationships, our health, our spiritual growth, and the pursuit of inner peace. We begin to live more consciously, aware that we have only this moment to make a difference. But how can we cultivate this understanding of impermanence in our daily lives? Start by reflecting on the temporary nature of everything around you. Look at the world and see how things are constantly changing, how the seasons change, how people change, how your own thoughts and feelings change. Take a moment to acknowledge the impermanence of your own life. We don't know how long we will be here, and that's why it's so important to make the most of the time we have. This realization can bring a sense of urgency, but not in the sense of stress or anxiety. Instead, it can inspire us to live more deeply and meaningfully. When we embrace impermanence, we no longer take life for granted. We begin to appreciate the simple moments of life, knowing that they are fleeting and precious. We can also embrace impermanence by practicing letting go. Let go of your attachment to outcomes. Let go of the need to control everything. Let go of the belief that things should always stay the same. Instead, learn to flow with the changes. Life is constantly moving, and when we learn to move with it, we find peace in the midst of change. Letting go is not about giving up or resigning ourselves to the flow of life. It is about releasing our attachment to the idea that we can control or fix everything. Letting go means trusting the natural course of events and accepting that change is part of life. This mindset frees us from the suffering of resistance and allows us to experience life more fully. As the Buddha said, all conditioned things are impermanent. When one sees this with wisdom, one turns away from suffering. When we understand that everything is in a constant state of flux, we can stop clinging to things and start living more freely. We no longer fear loss, because we understand that everything in life is subject to change. To live with the wisdom of impermanence is to live with greater freedom, peace, and acceptance. It is to embrace life as it is, ever-changing, ever-moving, and ever-growing. And it is to recognize that in every moment, there is an opportunity to live fully. Embracing impermanence offers us the freedom to live in harmony with life, understanding that change is the only constant. This realization not only brings peace, but also helps us cultivate a deep appreciation for every moment, knowing it is fleeting and precious. Part 9. The Power of Mindfulness, Living in the Present Moment. In the fast-paced world we live in today, it's easy to become overwhelmed with the demands of daily life. We're constantly juggling work, relationships, and personal goals. While our minds are often caught up in the past or the future, we spend so much time thinking about what has already happened or what might happen that we miss the only moment that truly exists, the present. The Buddha's teachings offer a simple, yet profound remedy to this dilemma: mindfulness. Mindfulness is the practice of bringing our attention fully to the present moment, without judgment or distraction. It's about being aware of what is happening right here, right now, whether it's the feeling of your breath, the sounds around you, or the sensations in your body. When we practice mindfulness, we stop rushing through life. We learn to slow down and be fully present in each moment. One of the reasons why mindfulness is so powerful is because it helps us to break free from the constant chatter of the mind. Our minds are often filled with thoughts, worries, and judgments, most of which are not grounded in reality. When we practice mindfulness, we begin to observe our thoughts without getting caught up in them. We realize that thoughts are just thoughts. They are not who we are. By cultivating mindfulness, we create space between ourselves and our thoughts, which allows us to respond to situations with clarity and compassion, rather than reacting impulsively. In Buddhism, mindfulness is often referred to as one of the Noble Eightfold Path practices, which are the fundamental guidelines for ethical and mental development. The Buddha taught that by cultivating mindfulness, we can overcome the defilements of greed, hatred, and delusion, and cultivate wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental clarity. The power of mindfulness lies in its simplicity. You don't need to do anything special or complicated to practice mindfulness. You can practice mindfulness while washing the dishes, walking in the park, or even having a conversation. It's simply about being aware of what's happening right now, without distraction or judgment. Let's take a moment to explore the benefits of mindfulness. 1. Reduced stress and anxiety. When we're constantly thinking about the past or worrying about the future, we create unnecessary stress and anxiety. Mindfulness brings us back to the present moment, where we can find peace and calm. Research has shown that regular mindfulness practice can reduce the symptoms of anxiety and depression and promote emotional well-being. 2. Improved focus and concentration. In a world filled with distractions, it's easy to lose focus. Mindfulness trains our minds to pay attention to one thing at a time, which improves our ability to concentrate and complete tasks with greater efficiency. 3. Increase self-awareness. By paying attention to our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors, we gain a deeper understanding of ourselves. We begin to notice patterns in our thinking and behavior that may be causing us unnecessary suffering. This self-awareness allows us to make more conscious choices and live with greater intention. 4. Greater compassion and empathy. Mindfulness helps us develop a non-judgmental awareness of ourselves and others. When we are mindful, we are more likely to respond to others with kindness and understanding, rather than reacting out of anger, fear, or frustration. 5. Living with purpose and meaning. Mindfulness helps us reconnect with what truly matters in life. By being present in the moment, we become more attuned to our values, desires, and passions. We begin to make choices that align with our true purpose, rather than getting caught up in the distractions and demands of the outside world. So, how can we bring mindfulness into our everyday lives? It's important to start small. You don't need to dedicate hours of your day to meditation or retreat into solitude to practice mindfulness. In fact, the best way to develop mindfulness is through daily practice in ordinary moments. Here are a few simple ways to cultivate mindfulness. A. Focus on your breath. One of the easiest ways to practice mindfulness is by simply paying attention to your breath. Close your eyes and take a few deep breaths. Feel the sensation of the air entering and leaving your body. If your mind starts to wander, gently bring your attention back to the breath. A body scan. A body scan is a simple mindfulness practice where you bring awareness to different parts of your body, starting from your toes and working your way up to your head. As you focus on each body part, notice any tension or discomfort without trying to change it. Simply observe and allow your awareness to be fully present with each sensation. In mindful walking, take a walk and pay attention to every step you take. Feel the ground beneath your feet. Notice the movement of your legs, and listen to the sounds around you. Walking can be a powerful mindfulness practice, as it grounds us in the present moment and connects us with the world around us. In mindful eating, the next time you eat, try to eat mindfully. Slow down and pay attention to the taste, texture, and smell of your food. Notice how it feels to chew and swallow, and savor each bite. Mindful eating can help you develop a greater appreciation for the nourishment that food provides, and it can also help you become more aware of your eating habits. In mindful listening, when you are in a conversation, practice mindful listening. Instead of thinking about what you are going to say next, focus on truly hearing the other person. Listen without judgment or interruption, and allow yourself to be fully present in the exchange. The key to mindfulness is patience and consistency. Like any skill, it takes time to develop, But with regular practice, mindfulness becomes second nature. The more you practice, the more present and aware you become in every moment. And as you become more mindful, you will start to notice the profound impact it has on your life, on your relationships, your work, and your inner peace. Remember that the present moment is the only moment we truly have. The past is gone, the future is uncertain, and the present is all that exists. When we live fully in the present moment, we experience life more deeply, with greater joy, peace, and clarity. So, make mindfulness a part of your daily practice, and watch how it transforms your life in ways you never imagined. Mindfulness is the gateway to experiencing life in its fullest form. It invites us to live consciously, to embrace the present moment, and to cultivate inner peace and clarity in our everyday lives. Through mindfulness, we can reduce stress, increase our self-awareness, and develop deeper compassion for ourselves and others. Part 10. Understanding the nature of suffering. Embracing life's challenges. We all encounter suffering in our lives, whether it's physical pain, emotional turmoil, or existential doubt. Suffering is an inescapable part of the human condition, yet we often try to avoid it, push it away, or resist it. But what if we told you that by understanding the nature of suffering, we can transform it? What if embracing our suffering could lead us to freedom and peace? This insight is at the core of Buddhist wisdom. In the Buddha's first sermon, he presented the Four Noble Truths, which are the foundation of his teachings. The first noble truth is the recognition that suffering, dukkha, is an inherent part of life. It is present in all things, whether in our relationships, in our jobs, or even in the passing of time. Suffering is inevitable, but it doesn't have to define us. The Buddha taught that suffering arises from attachment, from the clinging to things as permanent or unchanging. We grasp onto people, possessions, and experiences, believing that they will bring us lasting happiness. But when they inevitably change or disappear, we experience loss, disappointment, and pain. This attachment creates suffering because we are attached to things that are transient and impermanent. In Buddhism, we learn to recognize the nature of this suffering, so we can begin to release the attachments that cause it. It's not about running away from suffering or pretending it doesn't exist. Instead, it's about acknowledging it and understanding that it is a natural part of the human experience. Once we accept this, we can approach suffering with a sense of equanimity, of balance and calm, rather than fear or resistance. Let's explore how we can embrace the challenges of life, rather than running from them. 1. Recognizing the source of suffering. The first step in embracing suffering is understanding where it comes from. Suffering arises from our attachments and our desires. We desire pleasure, we desire comfort, and we desire permanence in a world that is inherently impermanent. When we grasp onto these desires, we set ourselves up for disappointment and pain. The Buddha taught that by letting go of attachment, we can free ourselves from suffering. This doesn't mean we should live without desires or without striving for happiness. It means recognizing that the nature of life is change, and we must learn to flow with it, rather than resist it. 2. Cultivating awareness of impermanence. One of the key insights in Buddhism is the recognition that everything is impermanent. All things, whether material possessions, relationships, or even our own thoughts and feelings, are subject to change. This awareness of impermanence can actually bring us peace. Instead of holding on tightly to things, we can learn to appreciate them fully in the moment and let them go when the time comes. This doesn't mean we detach from life or become indifferent. On the contrary, it means we engage fully with life, knowing that nothing lasts forever, and so we savor what we have while we have it. 3. The role of acceptance in suffering. Acceptance doesn't mean passivity or resignation. It means recognizing that we cannot change certain aspects of life, such as aging, illness, and death, and instead of fighting against them, we choose to accept them as part of the natural flow of existence. Acceptance allows us to let go of resistance and find peace in the midst of adversity. The Buddha teaches that we can transform our suffering by embracing it with an open heart. This doesn't mean we welcome pain or misery, but we acknowledge its presence without judgment. By doing so, we can stop being at war with life's difficulties. 4. The power of compassion in suffering. When we suffer, we often feel isolated or alone, but suffering is universal. Everyone experiences it in one form or another. Compassion is the key to transforming our suffering. When we open our hearts to our own pain, we can also open our hearts to the suffering of others. This shared experience of pain can bring us closer together and help us cultivate a deep sense of empathy. In Buddhism, compassion is seen as a powerful antidote to suffering because it connects us with others and allows us to transcend our own ego. 5. The path to freedom from suffering. The Buddhist teachings offer us a way out of suffering, the Noble Eightfold Path. This path includes practices that help us develop wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. By following this path, we gradually reduce the causes of suffering in our lives. The Buddha's path isn't about avoiding pain, but about learning to navigate through life with awareness, understanding, and compassion. By doing so, we can transcend suffering and achieve a state of inner peace, known as nirvana. When we start to understand that suffering is not something to be feared or avoided, we can begin to transform it. Embracing suffering is not about resignation or giving up, it's about freedom. Freedom from the need to constantly avoid, control, or escape pain. Freedom from attachment to the fleeting things that only bring temporary pleasure. Freedom to live fully in the present, knowing that everything is impermanent, and that change is the very essence of life. Through mindfulness, acceptance, and compassion, we can face suffering with an open heart. And in doing so, we find that it no longer has the power to control us. In fact, suffering can become the very catalyst for our growth and transformation. As we embrace the challenges of life, we begin to realize that they are not obstacles, but opportunities for awakening. This doesn't mean we will never experience pain again, but rather that we will learn to navigate life's difficulties with grace, understanding, and compassion. And in doing so, we move closer to the peace and freedom that the Buddha taught. Buddhism teaches us to embrace life's challenges rather than resist them. Through mindfulness, acceptance, and compassion, we can transform our suffering into a path of awakening and growth. Part 11. The Power of Mindfulness, Living Fully in the Present Moment. In our fast-paced, constantly connected world, it's easy to get caught up in the rush of everyday life. We are always thinking about what's next, worrying about the future, or reflecting on the past. But here's a powerful question to ask yourself. What would it be like if you were to truly live in the present moment? This is where mindfulness comes into play. Mindfulness is the practice of paying attention to the present moment with full awareness, without judgment. It's about bringing your focus to whatever you're experiencing right now, whether it's the sensation of your breath, the sounds around you, or the feelings in your body. In mindfulness, you are not thinking about what happened yesterday or what will happen tomorrow. You are simply here, now. The Buddha taught that the root of much of our suffering lies in our inability to be present. We are either stuck in our memories of the past or anxious about the future. Mindfulness is a way to break free from this cycle of thought. It invites us to embrace the present moment as it is, without wishing it were different. By practicing mindfulness, we begin to notice the impermanence of everything around us and within us. This awareness helps us to release attachments and to live more freely. How does mindfulness transform our lives? 1. Releasing attachment to the past and future. One of the greatest challenges we face is our attachment to the past. We replay old memories, we hold on to regrets, and we find ourselves stuck in what was. At the same time, we worry about the future, what will happen, what might go wrong. These thoughts create anxiety, stress, and suffering. Mindfulness allows us to let go of these attachments. By focusing on the present, we stop clinging to past mistakes or future uncertainties. Instead, we allow ourselves to experience life as it is right now, without the weight of yesterday or tomorrow. In this way, mindfulness frees us from the chains of time. 2. Finding peace in the present moment. When we practice mindfulness, we become more aware of the peace that is always present, even amidst life's challenges. Often, We are so consumed by our thoughts and distractions that we overlook the underlying peace that is available to us at all times. Whether we're walking in nature, drinking a cup of tea, or simply sitting quietly, mindfulness helps us to connect with the stillness of the present moment. This peace doesn't depend on external circumstances. It is always within us, waiting to be noticed. 3. Cultivating gratitude. Mindfulness helps us develop a deep sense of gratitude for the simple things in life. By bringing our attention to the present moment, we begin to notice the beauty in the small details that we often overlook. A flower blooming, the warmth of the sun, the sound of rain. All of these moments become opportunities to feel thankful for the life we have. Gratitude is a powerful antidote to suffering because it shifts our focus from what we don't have to what we do have. And when we focus on what we are grateful for, we naturally feel more content and at peace. 4. Developing greater compassion. As we become more mindful of our own thoughts, feelings, and actions, we also develop greater awareness of the struggles and pain of others. Mindfulness enhances our capacity for empathy because it teaches us to listen to ourselves and to others without judgment. When we practice being fully present with someone, we are able to understand their experiences more deeply. This creates a natural sense of compassion. By recognizing the suffering of others, we are inspired to act with kindness and understanding, just as we would want for ourselves. 5. Enhancing mental clarity and focus. In today's world, it can feel nearly impossible to focus. We are bombarded with distractions from social media, work emails, and constant notifications. Mindfulness trains the mind to stay focused on one thing at a time, which helps to reduce mental clutter and enhance clarity. By learning to bring our attention back to the present moment whenever we become distracted, we gradually increase our ability to focus on what's truly important. This mental clarity helps us make better decisions, be more productive, and experience greater peace of mind. Mindfulness in everyday life. You don't need to sit in a meditation hall to practice mindfulness. It can be incorporated into every aspect of your daily life. Here are some simple ways to bring mindfulness into your routine. Mindful breathing. Take a few minutes each day to focus on your breath. Feel the sensation of air entering and leaving your body. This simple practice can help you center yourself and bring you back to the present moment. Mindful eating. When you eat, pay attention to the flavors, textures, and smells of your food. Notice how your body feels as you eat and take time to enjoy each bite. This helps cultivate appreciation and prevent mindless eating. Mindful walking. Whether you're walking through the park or just moving from one room to another, try to bring awareness to each step. Notice the sensation of your feet touching the ground, the movement of your body, and the sounds around you. Walking becomes a practice of presence. Mindful listening. When you're talking to someone, listen deeply without interrupting or planning your response. Pay attention to the words, the tone of voice, and the emotions behind the conversation. This will help you cultivate greater empathy and build deeper connections with others. Conclusion: the liberation of mindfulness. Mindfulness is not a technique or a practice that you do once in a while. It's a way of living. It's about fully inhabiting each moment, free from the distractions and attachments that often cloud our minds. When we practice mindfulness, we are able to experience life as it truly is, impermanent, fleeting, and yet beautifully rich with opportunity. By living mindfully, we open ourselves to a deeper level of peace, freedom, and understanding. Mindfulness is the key to breaking the cycle of suffering and stepping into a life of clarity, compassion, and joy. If you want to live a life that's free from the constant rush of worry and distraction, try bringing mindfulness into your daily routine. It may not change your circumstances, but it will change your relationship to them. And in doing so, it will lead you to the path of true peace and happiness. Part 12. The importance of self-compassion. Embracing your imperfections. One of the most powerful teachings in Buddhism is the concept of self-compassion. In our fast-paced world, it's easy to become harsh with ourselves, to set impossible standards, and to feel like we're constantly falling short. But what if the key to happiness wasn't about being perfect? but rather about embracing our imperfections with kindness and understanding. Self-compassion is the ability to treat yourself with the same care, love, and kindness that you would offer to a close friend or loved one. It's about accepting yourself, flaws and all, without the need for self-criticism or judgment. And it's one of the most transformative practices you can adopt on the path to peace. The Buddhist teachings on self-compassion. In Buddhist teachings, compassion is not reserved only for others. The Buddha emphasized the importance of extending compassion to ourselves. He recognized that we, too, are worthy of love and care. Despite our flaws and imperfections, self-compassion allows us to break free from the cycle of self-judgment and guilt, which often keep us trapped in suffering. When we learn to offer ourselves compassion, we begin to dissolve the inner barriers that prevent us from experiencing true happiness. Rather than constantly striving for perfection, we accept our humanity and the fact that we will sometimes fall short. But that doesn't make us any less worthy of love or respect. In fact, embracing our imperfections can lead us to a deeper sense of peace. Why is self-compassion so important? 1. It reduces stress and anxiety. When we are constantly critical of ourselves, we create a never-ending cycle of stress and anxiety. We're always trying to do better, to be better, and to meet unrealistic standards. Self-compassion helps to break this cycle by reminding us that it's okay to make mistakes. We don't have to be perfect to be worthy of love and happiness. By accepting our flaws and treating ourselves with kindness, we can release the pressure we place on ourselves to be flawless. 2. It promotes emotional healing. Many of us carry deep emotional wounds, whether from past trauma, failures, or mistakes. These wounds often cause us to retreat inwardly, fearing judgment or rejection. Self-compassion allows us to heal from these wounds by offering ourselves the love and understanding we need to overcome our pain. It creates a safe space where we can acknowledge our hurts without fear of shame. By embracing ourselves with compassion, we open the door to emotional healing and growth. 3. It enhances self-acceptance. One of the most powerful aspects of self-compassion is that it helps us accept ourselves as we are. We stop trying to change who we are to fit into a mold that society or others have set for us. Instead, we begin to embrace our true selves, flaws and all. Self-acceptance is the foundation of true peace because it allows us to let go of the constant need for validation and approval. We realize that we are enough, just as we are. 4. It builds resilience. Life is full of challenges, and we are bound to face setbacks, failures, and disappointments along the way. Self-compassion helps us build resilience by encouraging us to be gentle with ourselves in times of difficulty. Instead of falling into self-blame or despair, we offer ourselves understanding and support. This allows us to bounce back more quickly, learn from our experiences, and continue moving forward with a sense of hope and determination. 5. It deepens our connection with others. When we practice self-compassion, we become more capable of extending compassion to others. We can only offer to others what we first give to ourselves. When we treat ourselves with kindness and understanding, we naturally begin to offer that same care to the people around us. Self-compassion creates a ripple effect, fostering a world where people are more empathetic, kind, and supportive toward one another. Practical ways to cultivate self-compassion. You might be wondering, how do I begin to cultivate self-compassion in my life? The good news is that it's a practice, and with time, it can become a natural part of your daily routine. Here are a few ways to start. 1. Speak to yourself with kindness. Notice the way you talk to yourself. Are you your own worst critic? Would you say the same things to a friend that you say to yourself? Start replacing negative self-talk with words of encouragement and kindness. Treat yourself as you would treat a beloved friend, offering understanding, patience, and love. 2. Practice mindful self-compassion. Mindfulness is a powerful tool for cultivating self-compassion. When you notice negative thoughts or emotions arise, pause and acknowledge them without judgment. You might say to yourself, "This is a difficult moment, and I am here for myself." This simple practice helps you recognize your struggles without criticizing yourself, allowing you to be more compassionate in the face of challenges. 3. Forgive yourself. Forgiveness is a key aspect of self-compassion. We all make mistakes, and it's important to forgive ourselves for the times we fall short. Remember that mistakes are part of being human, and they are opportunities for growth. Instead of holding on to guilt or regret, allow yourself to learn from your experiences and move forward with a sense of peace. 4. Engage in acts of self-care. Self-compassion involves taking care of your physical, emotional, and mental well-being. Take time to nurture yourself, whether it's through meditation, exercise, reading, or simply resting. Engage in activities that bring you joy and help you feel replenished. Self-care is a way of showing yourself love and respect, and it's essential for cultivating self-compassion. 5. Connect with others who practice compassion. Surround yourself with people who practice kindness and compassion. Their energy and mindset will help reinforce your own practice. Seek out communities or individuals who encourage self-compassion and engage in meaningful conversations that promote healing and understanding. The more you are around compassionate people, the more it will inspire you to cultivate this quality in your own life. Conclusion: embracing your imperfections with love. In the end, self-compassion is not about being perfect. It's about embracing our humanity, accepting our flaws, and treating ourselves with the same kindness and care we would offer to others. It is the path to emotional healing, peace, and true happiness. By practicing self-compassion, we release the burden of perfectionism and step into a life of acceptance and love. We learn to honor ourselves, flaws and all, and in doing so, we create a foundation of peace that radiates outward to everyone we encounter. So, as you move forward on your journey, remember this: you are enough, just as you are. Treat yourself with love, and the world will reflect that love back to you. Part 13. The Power of Mindful Living. Living with Intention. Living a life with intention is one of the most powerful ways to align ourselves with the wisdom of Buddhism. It's about making choices consciously and with awareness, rather than reacting impulsively or mindlessly to the circumstances around us. When we live mindfully, we step out of the autopilot mode that governs so much of our daily lives. We stop simply going through the motions and instead begin to live each moment with purpose. Mindfulness allows us to be present with whatever we're doing, whether it's eating, working, or even just breathing. In this state of presence, we unlock the potential for deeper connection, greater happiness, and more meaningful experiences. What is mindful living? Mindful living is the practice of paying full attention to the present moment without judgment. It's about being fully engaged with whatever you're doing, whether it's something as simple as washing the dishes or something more profound, like connecting with a loved one. In mindfulness, there is no rush to the future or dwelling on the past. There is only this moment. The Buddha taught that suffering arises when we are not present. We either regret the past or worry about the future, but rarely do we appreciate the now. When we learn to live in the present, we start to dissolve the inner turmoil caused by anxiety and regret. We allow ourselves to just be rather than constantly do. Mindful living is not just about being aware of what we're doing. It's also about bringing intention to every action. Living with intention means choosing to act in a way that aligns with your values, your goals, and your deeper purpose. The benefits of living with intention. Living mindfully and with intention has profound effects on every aspect of our lives. Some of the key benefits include: 1. Increased peace and clarity. When we stop rushing through life and take time to slow down, we experience a deep sense of peace. Mindfulness calms the mind, allowing us to see situations clearly and make decisions with greater wisdom. In this space of clarity, our worries and distractions lose their grip, and we can experience the world more fully. 2. Improved relationships. Mindful living enhances our ability to connect with others. By being present in conversations and interactions, we become more empathetic and compassionate. We listen deeply, without distraction, and respond with understanding, not reaction. This creates stronger, more meaningful relationships based on mutual respect and care. 3. Greater self-awareness. Mindfulness brings awareness to our thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. When we are mindful, We can observe our patterns without judgment. This self-awareness helps us understand why we react in certain ways and empowers us to make more conscious choices moving forward. We become less controlled by unconscious habits and more guided by our higher wisdom. 4. Enhanced focus and productivity. Ironically, when we slow down and pay attention to the task at hand, we become more productive. Mindfulness enhances focus because we are not distracted by the past or future. We can give our full attention to whatever we're doing, which leads to higher quality work and more efficient results. 5. Deeper contentment. When we live with intention, we stop chasing external validation or material success. Instead, we learn to be content with the present moment, appreciating life for what it is rather than constantly striving for more. Mindful living helps us find peace and simplicity, leading to a deeper sense of satisfaction and gratitude. The role of meditation in mindful living. In Buddhism, meditation is one of the core practices for cultivating mindfulness. Meditation helps to quiet the mind, allowing us to experience the present moment with clarity and awareness. It trains us to focus our attention, observe our thoughts without attachment, and return to the breath when our minds wander. Through meditation, we develop the ability to be present in every moment, not just when we're sitting quietly. The skills we cultivate during meditation, such as focused attention and emotional regulation, can be applied to all aspects of our lives, from interactions with others to the way we approach our work and personal challenges. The practice of mindfulness meditation doesn't require you to sit for hours or achieve a state of empty mind. It's about learning to observe your thoughts and feelings without becoming overwhelmed by them. Even a few minutes of daily meditation can significantly improve your ability to live mindfully. Practical ways to incorporate mindfulness into daily life. If you're new to mindfulness, you might be wondering how to start incorporating it into your daily routine. The good news is that it doesn't require drastic changes. Small, intentional steps can make a big difference. Here are a few ideas to get you started. 1. Mindful breathing. One of the simplest ways to practice mindfulness is through your breath. Take a few moments throughout the day to focus on your breath, the sensation of air entering and leaving your body. Whenever you feel stressed or distracted, return to your breath. This simple practice helps you reconnect with the present moment. 2. Mindful eating. Instead of rushing through meals, try eating mindfully. Pay attention to the colors, textures, and flavors of your food. Chew slowly and savor each bite. Notice how your body feels as you eat, and when you're full, stop. This not only enhances the enjoyment of food, but it also improves digestion and promotes healthier eating habits. 3. Mindful walking. Next time you go for a walk, try to do it mindfully. Focus on the sensations of your feet touching the ground, the rhythm of your steps, and the sounds around you. Let go of any distractions or racing thoughts, and simply enjoy the act of walking. This can be a powerful way to ground yourself in the present moment. 4. Mindful listening. When you're having a conversation, really listen. Put away distractions like your phone and give your full attention to the person speaking. Listen not just with your ears, but with your heart. This helps you connect more deeply with others and creates a sense of mutual respect and understanding. 5. Mindful technology use. In today's digital age, it's easy to become mindlessly absorbed in our phones, computers, or social media. Practice mindful technology use by setting boundaries around screen time and being intentional about the content you consume. Take breaks to reconnect with the real world and reduce the mental clutter caused by excessive digital distractions. Conclusion: living with purpose. Mindful living and living with intention are not about perfection. They're about showing up fully for each moment, with awareness, compassion, and a sense of purpose. It's about making conscious choices that align with your values and your highest aspirations. When you live with intention, you begin to create a life that is not dictated by external forces, but shaped by your own wisdom and inner peace. Mindfulness allows you to truly experience life, each breath, each moment, without being caught in the distractions and worries of the mind. So, as you move forward, remember that every moment is an opportunity to be present, to choose your actions consciously, and to live with intention. In this way, we can truly live a life that is aligned with our highest truths, one moment at a time. Part 14. Breaking free from the cycle of unnecessary suffering. One of the key teachings of Buddhism is that suffering is an inevitable part of life. However, the Buddha also offered a way out of suffering, the path of liberation. So, what does this mean in the context of our everyday lives? We all experience suffering in one way or another. It may be physical pain, emotional turmoil, or the suffering caused by attachment to things that are temporary. However, suffering does not have to be a permanent condition. Buddhism teaches that we have the power to break free from suffering through wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline. Understanding the nature of suffering. The first step in breaking free from suffering is understanding its nature. The Buddha identified 3 key aspects of suffering, which he described in the Four Noble Truths. 1. Suffering exists. This is the first truth. It's a basic fact of life. Pain, loss, and disappointment are unavoidable. But this doesn't mean that life is all suffering. It simply means that suffering is a part of the human experience. 2. The cause of suffering is attachment. The second truth teaches that our attachment to things, whether they are physical possessions, relationships, or even ideas, creates suffering. When we hold on to things too tightly, when we become overly attached to them, we set ourselves up for disappointment when they inevitably change or fade away. 3. Suffering can be ended. The third truth offers hope. It shows that suffering is not a permanent condition. We have the ability to transcend it. This can be done by letting go of attachments and embracing the impermanence of life. 4. The path that leads to the cessation of suffering. The fourth truth provides us with the roadmap to ending suffering, the Noble Eightfold Path. By following this path, we can live a life of wisdom, ethical conduct, and mental discipline, freeing ourselves from the causes of suffering, breaking the cycle of attachment. Attachment is at the core of much of our suffering. We cling to material things, to relationships, to status, to comfort, and to familiar experiences. We fear losing these things, which creates anxiety and frustration. But attachment, according to Buddhist teachings, is a form of ignorance. It is the misunderstanding that things are permanent and will always provide us with the happiness we seek. The Buddhist teachings remind us that everything in life is impermanent, anicca. All things arise, change, and pass away. When we grasp at something as if it will last forever, we set ourselves up for disappointment because we are resisting the flow of life. The more we resist change, the more we experience suffering. Letting go of attachment. One of the most powerful practices in Buddhism is learning to let go. Letting go doesn't mean abandoning responsibilities or relationships. It means releasing our attachment to the idea that things must remain exactly as they are in order to be happy. It is recognizing the truth of impermanence and accepting that all things are constantly changing, including ourselves. When we practice non-attachment, we cultivate a sense of peace because we no longer depend on external circumstances for our happiness. We learn to find contentment within ourselves, independent of the transient world around us. The role of compassion in reducing suffering. Another key aspect of breaking free from suffering is the cultivation of compassion. Buddhism teaches that true happiness arises when we care for others, when we extend love and kindness, not only to those we know but to all beings, regardless of their circumstances. When we are compassionate, we naturally feel less suffering, because compassion shifts our focus from self-centered worries to the well-being of others. It opens our hearts and allows us to be more present with those around us, offering them comfort and support. The more we engage in compassionate action, the less our own suffering seems to take center stage. The liberation of the mind. In Buddhism, mental discipline is just as important as ethical conduct and wisdom. Our thoughts shape our experience of reality, and by cultivating a mind that is peaceful and focused, we can break free from the cycles of suffering. One way to achieve this is through meditation, which trains the mind to remain calm and centered. Meditation allows us to observe our thoughts without becoming attached to them. We learn to see thoughts as they come and go, without identifying with them or reacting to them. This creates space in the mind, reducing the mental clutter and anxiety that often accompany suffering. Embracing impermanence as freedom. The realization of impermanence is both a source of suffering and a path to liberation. When we accept that everything is temporary, we are freed from the chains of attachment and the fear of loss. We stop holding on to things with white-knuckled intensity, and instead, we begin to appreciate the beauty and uniqueness of each moment. Impermanence allows us to live more fully. It encourages us to savor life's fleeting moments, to experience joy and love without the fear of them slipping away. When we let go of the need to control, we create space for freedom, peace, and contentment. The role of wisdom in ending suffering. In Buddhism, wisdom is the ability to see things as they truly are. It is not about intellectual knowledge, but about deep insight into the nature of existence. Wisdom comes when we realize that our suffering is often self-inflicted. It is born from our desires, attachments, and ignorance. When we develop wisdom, we begin to understand the impermanent nature of all things, including our emotions and thoughts. We see that everything, including our pain, is transient. This understanding allows us to respond to suffering with equanimity rather than fear or resistance. Conclusion: embracing the path to freedom. Breaking free from unnecessary suffering is not an overnight process. It is a journey. The teachings of Buddhism offer us a practical path to gradually reduce suffering in our lives. Through mindfulness, letting go of attachments, practicing compassion, and developing wisdom, we can begin to live more peacefully and harmoniously. By embracing the impermanence of life, we open ourselves to the freedom that comes with accepting change. Suffering becomes not a permanent state, but a part of the flow of life, one that we can move through with greater ease and understanding. The power to break free from suffering lies within each of us. By following the teachings of the Buddha and applying them to our daily lives, we can transcend the cycle of pain and find true peace. Part 15. Living with Purpose and Mindfulness. In the search for liberation, it's important to ask ourselves, what is the purpose of life? How can we truly live a meaningful existence while also relieving ourselves from the cycle of suffering? Buddhism offers profound insights into living with purpose, emphasizing that true fulfillment comes not from external achievements or possessions, but from cultivating a deep sense of mindfulness and connection to the present moment. The power of mindfulness. Mindfulness, or sati, is at the heart of Buddhist practice. It is the art of being fully present in each moment, without judgment or distraction. When we are mindful, we are not caught up in the past or the future, but fully attuned to the current moment, our thoughts, our actions, and the sensations of life. But what does mindfulness actually look like in daily life? It's about bringing awareness to every moment, whether we're washing dishes, walking, or simply breathing. It's the practice of cultivating a deep appreciation for the present, regardless of how mundane or extraordinary the moment might seem. Living in alignment with the present moment. When we live with mindfulness, we naturally begin to live with purpose. Our purpose is no longer driven by external desires or pressures, but is instead aligned with the flow of life itself. In this way, we free ourselves from the constant chase for happiness outside of ourselves and begin to see the beauty and fulfillment in the present moment. Buddhism teaches that life is not something we need to escape from. In fact, true peace is found in embracing the present as it is. Through mindfulness, we learn to approach every situation with clarity, openness, and acceptance, allowing us to let go of the anxiety that often accompanies our attachments to outcomes. Living in harmony with others. A purposeful life also involves living in harmony with others. In Buddhist thought, this is often referred to as practicing right relationships. We are not isolated individuals but interconnected with everyone and everything around us. Our actions, words, and thoughts all have an impact on the world around us, whether positive or negative. The practice of mindfulness includes paying attention to our interactions with others. Are we acting with kindness and compassion? Are we present for those we love and care about, as well as for those we don't know? By cultivating mindful relationships, we foster a sense of community and interconnectedness, which is essential for both our personal peace and the well-being of others. The balance of doing and being. Living with purpose also requires us to find the balance between doing and being. In a world filled with distractions and endless to-do lists, it can be hard to pause and just be. Yet, Buddhist teachings encourage us to balance our striving and actions with moments of stillness and presence. The key is to approach every task with mindfulness, whether we are working, interacting with others, or simply being by ourselves. We can infuse these moments with purpose by being fully present. Even the most mundane tasks can become a source of mindfulness and meaning when we approach them with awareness and intention. The Four Immeasurables, a guide to living with purpose. In addition to mindfulness, Buddhism teaches us to cultivate the four immeasurables: loving kindness, compassion, empathetic joy, and equanimity. These are qualities that guide us in living with purpose and harmony in all of our relationships and actions. 1. Loving kindness. Metta. This is the practice of wishing all beings happiness and peace. When we cultivate loving kindness, we seek the well-being of others, not out of obligation, but from a deep sense of love and compassion. 2. Compassion. Karuna. Compassion goes hand in hand with loving kindness, but it focuses specifically on relieving the suffering of others. It is the genuine wish to help others find freedom from pain, whether that pain is physical, emotional, or spiritual. 3. Empathetic joy. Mudita. Empathetic joy is the ability to rejoice in the happiness and success of others. In a world often filled with competition and comparison, empathetic joy is a powerful antidote that encourages us to celebrate the good fortune of others rather than feel envy or jealousy. 4. Equanimity. Upekkha. Equanimity is the practice of maintaining balance and calm, regardless of external circumstances. It is the ability to stay centered and unshaken, even in the face of life's inevitable ups and downs. With equanimity, we learn to remain grounded in the midst of change, living with wisdom and clarity. Living with purpose is also closely tied to living with wisdom. Wisdom, in the Buddhist sense, is not just intellectual knowledge, but insight into the true nature of reality. It's the ability to see things as they truly are, without the filter of our biases, desires, and attachments. When we approach life with wisdom, we are more likely to make choices that align with our deepest values. We understand that our actions have consequences, not just for ourselves, but for others as well. Wisdom allows us to live in a way that minimizes harm and maximizes well-being for ourselves and the world around us. Purpose as a path to liberation. At the core of Buddhist wisdom is the understanding that true fulfillment is not about external achievements or acquiring more things. True fulfillment arises from living in accordance with our deepest values, cultivating wisdom, and making meaningful contributions to the world. Purpose, in this sense, is not something to be found outside of us. It is something that arises naturally when we are aligned with the truth of who we are. The ultimate freedom, freedom from self. Ultimately, the deepest purpose in Buddhism is the liberation from the self, the ego, and the freedom from the cycle of birth, death, and rebirth. This is the goal of enlightenment, or nirvana. When we let go of our attachment to the self, we transcend suffering and experience the pure peace of being. Living with purpose is not about attaining anything external, but about releasing the need for attachment, letting go of the illusion of the self, and embracing the oneness of all things. It is in this release that we find the deepest sense of freedom, the freedom that comes from knowing we are not separate from the world, but a part of the unfolding of all life. In conclusion, the Buddhist teachings offer us a profound path to living a life of purpose, wisdom, and liberation. Through mindfulness, compassion, and wisdom, we can live with greater clarity and meaning, finding peace not in external possessions, but in the awareness and appreciation of the present moment. Life is fleeting, but through mindful living, we can make every moment count. By embracing the impermanent nature of existence and living in harmony with the world around us, we can break free from suffering and experience the true freedom that comes from within. The key to a meaningful life is not about grasping for something outside of us, but cultivating a deeper connection to who we truly are. Through the practice of Buddhist wisdom, we can all live with greater purpose, compassion, and inner peace, creating a life that is truly worth living.